Welcome to this webinar. This is Paul Cramey, and today we're going to be talking about logging in and out of control, and then we will review some of the home screen attributes. The webinar should take maybe 15 to 20 minutes at max. I hope this is helpful to you. I'm going to switch to control. Okay, to use control, you have to have a username and you have to have a password. And typically the password and username are assigned by a manager or the owner. And the password has to be at least 8 characters in length. And it has to contain at least one uppercase letter. And it has to contain at least one numeric letter. Now I've already logged in, so I'm going to log out so we can see that process. You're going to see a screen similar to this when you first log into control. Yours will look a little bit different. It won't have this top line in all likelihood. And this is here because of the environment that I'm in. So when you reach this login screen, whether you're starting from scratch or had logged out and you're logging back in, this is what you would see. You would enter your username, login name right here, and then you would enter your password, and then you would enter OK. Now, since I'm in a slightly different environment, I don't have to do this. So I'm just going to say OK, and then that will bring me back into control. When you change the password or get your initial password, periodically control will require that you change that password. And typically that'll occur maybe every 30 to 45 days. And what's important to note is that you cannot reuse the same password. It has to be different. And that's done for security reasons. So typically every 30 to 45 days, control will give you a prompt that indicates that you need to change your password. Now, there are 2 features that I want to talk about briefly here. And those are called auto lock out and auto log off. Both of those have some similarities, but they're still subtly a little bit different. The auto lock out feature has always existed in control. The auto log off is newer, and it has been involved since the release of Control 6.1. And if you go up to the Help button in About Control, right here is where you'll see what version of the software you have. So 6.1 and newer will have that auto log off. But if you're before 6.0 and earlier, then that feature is not a part of the system. Both of these features are optional and operate based on a pretty common set of rules. Now, the activating, deciding whether or not you want to use either or both of those features. I'll cover that in a later session webinar where we're going to talk about user constants. And that's where you will go to actually set up whether or not you're going to use those two features. The lock out, the auto lock out, locks the screen after a certain period of idleness, typically 10 minutes, but you can change that time. The auto log off actually logs you fully out of control so that you have to actually log back in. And again, that's optional. And if you activate it, that the default time is around 10 minutes, but it can be set by you and the user options to either less than 10 minutes or more than 10 minutes. That's discretionary on your part. Now, to exit control, the best way to do that is just the X in the exit button here, or you can come over to File, and say close. You're probably going to find that the X for exiting out is the most expeditious way to do that. Now, a couple of key takeaways on this particular short introduction is you have to have a username and you have to have a password. For new employees, the manager or the owner is going to assign you that initial username and will give you the initial login. And then periodically after that, you're going to have to change it. Now, once you log in that very first time with that temporary password, the system will, in fact, require you to change the login. Now, the rest of this session, we're going to talk about and just review from top to bottom the home screen. The top two rows up here, these are referred to as the taskbar. The column over here on the far right, that's referred to as the action toolbar. The area in the middle here, this is a dashboard, and this particular dashboard is called Default Home. It's the way I have the system set up that represents how I want to see what's on this particular home screen dashboard. Now, the items with the blue headings here, these are all called instruments, and each of these instruments has a different set of attributes. So this is just some shortcuts for logging out and locking the screen. Some attributes for using the time clock. Quick products, which we'll talk about in more detail in one of the later webinars. Quick way to look up stuff either by order or estimate or PO number. And then what's referred to as the navigator. And you can see the icons around the navigator that represent the different functions that you can use. Now, I'm going to start with the task or the toolbar, the taskbar up here at the top, and we'll talk about the items in the first row first, and then we'll talk about some of the items in the second row. So all of these features up here have a pull down. If you just click on it, it will bring a pull down list of other things that you can do. So you can close the period, you can start a new order, you can lock the screen, you can change your password, you can log out, and then you can actually close control. The second one is, this is where you would go if you want to choose a different dashboard. And if I click on that, you can see that there are, I chose the wrong one here, just a second. Moving across the screen here, these are actions, where action to close, action to open, actually to save a dashboard under a new name, and the ability to lock the screen. Customers, exploring for customers, trying to find them, entering a new customer, and it's similar all the way across the top row. All of the reports are generated off of this top row here. Production related tasks are in the production tab, and setup is for the most part, you will have to have security permission to do many of the things that are in the setup. And then the help screen. Now, notice the little diamond right here. If there are things on this top row that aren't important to you in the way you're going to use control on a day-to-day basis, they can be removed. So just if you're not going to be involved in doing any of the setup functions, just click on that and that takes it out. So if you're not involved with anything that's production related, then you can remove it. Now to add those back is just as easy. Come in and select production and come back in and set up, choose the setup task. So all of these you can add to or remove from based on how you're going to use the system. Now, before I talk about the various icons, you have the same kind of choices in the second row of the taskbar. So if I choose the downward arrow here, by removing a check mark, so if I'm not going to be involved in marketing, it disappeared from the list, from the items there. If I put it back, now it reappears. So you can customize the taskbar so that it's more representative of how you're going to use the system. Now, each of these, here's an icon to log out. Here's, I kind of got off track a little bit. We're talking about the dashboard. There are a lot of predefined dashboards. So if you're involved in the accounting process, one of these might be helpful. If you're involved in the marketing, then one of the others may be. So let's just quickly look at, say you're responsible for the receivables. You're going to be involved with that. Now you got a different look completely. This is an AR summary by customer. So the one that's highlighted over here, now you see the open orders that there's a money due, that the list here. And scroll down, you can see the remaining ones, calendar, etc. So you can choose the calendar, the dashboard to suit how you're going to use the system. Now, new is what you want to do something new. You either want to create a new company, you want to create a new order, you want to create a new estimate, create a new vendor, et cetera, et cetera. Now, these same kinds of functions for a new company, you can do that also on the home screen from here. New order, you can do it from the home screen here, the dashboard, new estimates. So depending on what is more efficient, if you got other things that are going on and you've got other screens that are open across this blue row here, then it's probably not going to be as efficient to choose some of these functions from the dashboard. So more than likely, the way you're going to want to do some of these is from the taskbar itself. Now, Explore, we'll go into considerably more detail on this in a later topic in webinar, but this is how you find things. So you're going to search for orders, for estimates. You're going to search for companies. You're going to search for a specific contact within the company. Now you can also choose the Explorer from the navigator screen here, but generally it's going to be, again, more efficient to do so from the taskbar. The history, I want to come back up real quick to the history. This is something that's relatively new. You heard me reference version 6.1 and newer. That's when this was added. And as you get more and more accustomed to using the system, and you've used it over several days or weeks or months, there'll be times when you started to do something and then you got interrupted. You either left and came back and you had trouble remembering where you were and what you were working on. The history keeps a log for a certain period of time based on the different things that you had been working on. Okay, so you can use the history button to select it and come in and perhaps find what it was that you were doing and immediately get back to it. So if I was wanting to work again on that particular order, I would just select it and that order would open up. Very helpful feature. The support button, I'm not sure if it goes back to the version just starts with version 6.1 or not. But this is very, very helpful if you have issues or you have problems with something and you need to reach out to the tech support department. This gives you the ability to create a service ticket. So you would fill in the fields, the blanks here, that so that you can give a more thorough description of what your request is and what the issue is that you may be having. And then when you're all done, simply say submit, and that goes into the directly into the tech support logs at Sirius, and they work those off from from top to bottom. But after you've created a service ticket like this, then you can go back and browse and refresh and actually look at the status. Very, very helpful feature for submitting a request for some help. Just a quick comment on the dashboards. Again, it's too complex to get into here, but you can create a dashboard from scratch. You can switch to a different one and just simply use it. And you can modify an existing one. So if there were some things on one of these that you didn't want, you can simply use the and say edit and make changes to it, or close it. So if I don't want that, it disappears. I'm going to close out, but the more detailed discussion of creating dashboards is a little bit more complex than what we can get into. Now, if you have a dashboard that you want to use as your preferred dashboard, then that can be set up and permanently a part of what you do in the user options that we'll talk about in a later webinar. So kind of wrap this webinar up. The key things for you to remember are that the top two rows here are referred to as the dashboard, the taskbar. The vertical one over here is the action toolbar, and what you see in the action toolbar will vary greatly depending on what it is that you're doing. So if you're working on an estimate, for example, when I first open it, you can select edit so that you can make changes to it. You'll probably be able to print from it. You'll be able to clone it. You'll be able to mark one void. Similarly with orders. So what actually appears and doesn't appear here depends completely on what it is that you're involved with. This concludes this webinar. I hope you'll join on one of the other 6 topics. Again, those 6 topics are more topic driven, and they don't necessarily have to be viewed in any particular order. I hope this session's been helpful, and thanks a lot. Bye-bye.